Stand by to go live. On my mark. 3, 2.
Metalicious.
At my signal, unleash hell.
The loudest, sexiest metal show on the planet. Metalicious.
What a great way to kick off the show. Some old school progressive metal from Texas. The band Watchtower with Hidden Instincts on Metalicious. Man, welcome to the show. I am your crazy cracker-ass cracker host, Trishalicious, every Saturday night on Metal Assault Radio from 10 p.m. to midnight. And man, do we have a jam-packed show for you. Check it out. Tonight's show theme is progressive metal. And Jeff Wagner, music historian, journalist, and author of the kick-ass book titled Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Heavy Metal, is going to be on the show tonight, where we're going to discuss his idea of progressive music in depth. And we're going to be giving away 2 copies of the book Mean Deviation, plus we have tickets to see Behemoth and Watain on the Decibel Magazine Tour Sunday, April 22nd at the Hawthorne Theater. The numbers you need to keep close are 877-758-5572, extension 702 for Metalicious. So, my friends, let's journey together through the land of progressive metal, where we find ourselves in Norway. The year is 2010. The band is Enslaved. This album is titled Axioma Ethica Odini. Here's the track Lightning on MetalAssaultRadio.com. The Devin Townsend Project on Metalicious with Planet of the Apes, where we have put the spotlight tonight on progressive metal. And what a better way to discuss this most amazing music than to have Jeff Wagner, heavy metal genius, super nice man who knows his music, be it black metal, death metal, or progressive metal. And as a matter of fact, he wrote the first book about progressive metal titled Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Metal. And he is going to be with us for the next 2 hours. Hell yeah. Jeff, thank you so much for being here tonight. Now, for those who are not familiar with you and your work, can you give us a brief history lesson on Jeff Wagner and how you got involved in writing this kick-ass book?
Sure. I think it starts with being a fan, as hopefully anybody that kind of writes about music, and that's lifelong, as you probably know. And then, I think like in my late teens or so, I started just contributing to fanzines, and then eventually led to, when I was in college at the University of Iowa, I did some radio, college radio, did a metal show there. And, one thing leads to another with all that kind of stuff. And I was really following my heart with a lot of stuff. And I ended up, long story short, really, getting a job at Relapse Records in the mid-'90s, which led somehow, in some roundabout way, to my position at Metal Maniacs magazine, which I was co-editor there for 5 years or so, late 90s, early 2000s. And then since then, I've been working for a couple different record labels, from home. I currently work for Century Media Records here at home in North Carolina, so that's kind of nice. But yeah, as far as the book goes, I guess I was always really interested and really drawn to those bands in the genre that were either experimental or progressive or just really kind of different and stood out from the kind of metal norm. Mm-hmm. I definitely like my traditional metal, but I was always drawn to these kind of weirder bands, and I enjoyed when these bands would put out records, one after the other, that you just didn't know where they were going with their direction, and it was always kind of exciting. They kept you on your toes.
You're like, what the hell? Awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I've said it before, and I will say it again, that it's not like I want to pay for a failure or have a band disappoint me, but I really do kind of like to have a big question mark go off in my head when I'm listening to some band's new album sometimes. I kind of like that, okay, this, like when I sit down with it, it's like, okay, this is going to take a while to get to know. This is going to take some getting used to, and I have to like grapple with the direction of where they're going, and I find that exciting. I mean, I just don't want the same thing every time, and different listeners have different values, but that's often a value for me. Not always, but it was the bands that would take kind of drastic left turns that I always found so intriguing.
It's
and
kind
a lot of those bands qualify as progressive, so therefore, I was kind of like, I think, kind of primed to write that book. And plus, a book about progressive metal hadn't been written yet, and I decided to endeavor to be the first one.
Nice. It's kind of like certain albums for me, I'll listen to it at first, and I'm like, man, it's just not necessarily what my ear is when I'm thinking of that specific band, not necessarily what my ear would think. And then you listen to it again, and then you're like, you know what, this is not bad. And then you listen to it again, you're like, fuck, this is amazing.
Yeah, no, totally. And we all know those albums where we might go back 10 years from the release of that album, and finally, aha, we get it.
Absolutely right.
Sometimes those things take time, and there's a ton of examples, I'm sure, for all of us that are kind of like that.
Hell yeah. Now, Jeff, where did the idea come from to write a book about progressive metal?
About, 10, 12 years ago, we were playing that metal trivia game. I don't know if you remember it.
Yes.
From Canada. Mental Meltdown. It was like kind of a Trivial Pursuit style game. We were playing it, and I tend to have this, like, talent for absorbing, like, ridiculous metal knowledge. I mean, just stupid shit. And we were playing, and I was beating him as I beat everybody that I played that game with.
Nice.
And he's like, dude, and I had just quit Maniacs, and I was kind of doing some, like, behind-the-scenes record label stuff in my new home at the time, and, my, whatever it was, visibility or whatever, had kind of gone down. He's like, dude, you got to put this knowledge to work. This is ridiculous, And I'm like, well, maybe someday I'll write a book. I've always wanted to write a metal book of some sort. And he knew what kind of stuff I was into, and I think he might have been the one to put the seed in my head about doing a progressive metal book. But fast forward 8 or 9 years, and that's when I actually thought, aha, I think that this is a perfect publisher to take a book like that. It's something I've been thinking about for years. And plus, yeah, I was reading a lot of books, and by let's say the mid-2000s, early 2000s, metal had finally had enough of a history where you were reading history books about it because it was more than just a decade or two old now, and many things had happened, and many things had percolated, and there were a lot of outgrowths, and there were a lot of different things happening, and it really by that point it was really a true and art form with a lot of depth to it. So the book started coming out, and I thought, well, it's time for the progressive metal book because the books about everything else have been written. Why not that one?
Absolutely. It's neat to know that you guys are...
It was a collision of different things, or a meeting of different things where, the seed was planted in my head. It was something I always liked. I'd always been in writing and done a lot of writing. Always liked reading about, reading books about music, including metal stuff. So yeah, it was just kind of everything kind of came together at the right time, I think, to make the book happen.
And we are very grateful for this. Tonight on Metalicious, Jeff Wagner, author of the book titled Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Metal. You can pick up your copy at bazillionpoints.com. And more with Jeff in mere moments after we find caller 6 at 877-758-5572. Extension 702. Caller 6 is going to win tickets to see Behemoth and Watain at the Hawthorne Theater Sunday, April 22nd. Good luck. Now, back to the music. Here is, in my opinion, one of the best bands who produces some kick-ass progressive music. It's Fate's Warning with Parts of the Machine on MetalAssaultRadio.com. Metalicious with Voivod and Into My Hypercube, where we have put the focus on progressive metal, and we have the progressive metal king, Jeff Wagner, on the show talking about his book titled Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Metal. Now, Jeff, while I was reading your book, my idea of what progressive metal sounds like began to change. Can you share with us your idea of what progressive metal is?
Sure. I'll try not to be too long-winded, but it's a pretty complex subject, which, of course, is why I wrote a 400-page book about it. But you're right. I mean, well, here's the thing. Like, one, I didn't want to be too liberal and just say, oh, anybody that threw a flute into one song, like track 7 on their 3rd album, is progressive. I mean, that doesn't fly for me either, you know. But I do think Rush is huge and great. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. Dream Theater, hugely important, great band, and definitely deserve as much space as they did get in the book. But I've always found, I mean, this goes back to when Dream Theater began to have an impact, I guess probably after the Pull Me Under got big and they started to really just kind of become an anchor for a lot of younger musicians. But I always found it ironic that these musicianly types, these younger kids and these younger bands, would really kind of like set themselves into this style of like what Dream Theater was doing, and to a lesser degree what Fates Warning and Queensryche were doing, that whole, and Rush, that whole sort of deal. And it became a style very quickly, and you had bands from all over the world playing this style. There's nothing inherently wrong in that. I'm not making a judgment call about that, but I just hate the use of the word progressive in that sense, because it's not progressive. If you look back to the progressive rock movement, which is kind of a totally different thing than the metal one, but they definitely intersect as well. Like, at that time, Genesis didn't sound like Yes, and Yes didn't sound like Jethro Tull, and Jethro Tull didn't sound like Van der Graaf Generator, and Van der Graaf Generator didn't sound like Eloy. All these bands had their own sort of personalities and directions and ideas and their own uniqueness, for sure. It was only like later in the 70s or the early 80s that some newer bands came along and tried to ape those styles. And again, there's nothing wrong with that style, but it's not progressive anymore, right?
Right, no.
If you're applying the dictionary definition of the word progressive, and I tend to do that, I tend to want to take that literally. If something is called death metal, I hope it sounds like death. I hope it's not pretty. I hope it's not watered down. I hope it's not compromised. I hope it just sounds like absolute death, which is why, like, when I listen to death metal, I tend to go for the super extreme and raw and gross kind
awesome
of stuff. But again, like, yeah, I mean, but I love pop too. I love my pop bands. So it's really like what you're expecting out of these things, and also like when you get into semantics like progressive, like what should progressive be, like why you're using that word to apply to this band. So that's where I was coming from. So it is more of an open-ended thing. Like, okay, progressive is not a style; it's an application of a variety of influences. It leaves a lot open for the artist. But certainly, I hope that every progressive band is totally unique, and that one does not sound like the other. So, really, I think there's a second progressive metal book that can come out and be about all these what I'll call inside-out bands or Nightmare Records bands, or the bands that fit more into the style or the mold of what a lot of people take as prog metal. Right? Gotcha. That would be a great book, and I'd be happy to read it. I think it'd be fun.
So do I. More from Jeff Wagner talking about his book titled Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Heavy Metal, out now on bazillionpoints.com. Now, there are so many killer things going on this weekend, and one of them is a dear friend to the show and of mine. His name is Marcus, and he is celebrating his birthday tonight. Happy birthday, Marcus. I hope it is fucking killer, and I hope you get laid, because, goddammit, everybody should get laid on their birthday. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to say it's my fucking birthday every goddamn day. All right, I'm just kidding. Also, today I met some cool guys from the band Fascinerous. They actually came down to Fantasy for Adults Only, the store in downtown Portland, to say hello. And they are going to be playing at the Ash Street on Monday night. I believe it's from 10 p.m. to midnight. Killer guys, nice as fuck, awesome music. So I'm going to be there Monday night, and I hope to see you guys there too. Oh, and also, if you would like to see Behemoth and Watain, The Devil's Blood, and In Solitude, Sunday night, April 22nd at the Hawthorne Theater, you need to be caller 6 right now at 877-758-5572, extension 702 for Metalicious. Good luck. Now, two of the bands which merit a great amount of discussion in your book are Voivod and Celtic Frost. In fact, there's an entire chapter of the book dedicated just to those two bands. In your opinion, what makes these two very unique and very different bands so important in the history of progressive heavy metal?
Well, it was a very deliberate choice to feature those two in their own chapter. There's a couple reasons. Well, I think they're kind of as important to, say, more extreme progressive metal as Dream Theater and Fate's Warning are to the more melodic forms of progressive metal. I also think they were the earliest in the, I don't know what you want to call it, the early thrash days, the early death metal days. They were really the first two to take that subgenre of metal, or the sub-subgenre of wherever they were, and just really blasted off into like some really new areas. And they were really brave, and they were really risk takers. And I have just total admiration for them for doing what they did. And it also set up a platform to take off on more modern extreme metal bands later in the book. And if you'll notice, like everybody from Dream Theater to Opeth to I think Psy to a bunch of bands later on in the book give a lot of credit to Voivod. So they're just huge because of their entire discography. I'd say the first 7 albums were just so radically different from one another as they were coming out. They were the band that took these left turns that as a listener you go, whoa, I'm going to need some time to process, because they would change so rapidly and so significantly. With Celtic Frost, I don't really consider them a progressive metal band per se, except for the one album, their third album, Into the Pandemonium. And that thing was so radical and just so bizarre and such a brave step, and a lot of people still think it was a foolish step. But I think their bravery needed to be awarded, and their story needed to be told in the context of the progressive metal story. And if you just think about that album really quick, it starts off with a cover of a New Wave song. That's like the lead-off track by a band called Wall of Voodoo. They do Mexican radio. I mean, right away, like a bunch of red flags go up for the Celtic Frost fans that had bought that album when it came out, and we're like, what the hell, right? There's orchestration all over the album. There are samples that are kind of, or not samples, but like like soul singers, like background singers that sound more R&B than anything. There's like a beatbox track called One in Their Pride. Totally beatbox, has nothing to do with metal. And there's other weird stuff going on in the album, all over the place. Opera, there's like an opera track. Like, so, in 1987 in thrash metal, this was truly bizarre, and I don't think that many bands have out-bizarred them to this day. Actually,
I would have to agree with you.
Speaking of, here they are, Celtic Frost with Babylon Fell on MetalAssaultRadio.com. Metalicious putting the spotlight on progressive heavy metal tonight with Cynic and How Could I? And if you just tuned in, we have special guest Jeff Wagner, heavy metal historian and author of the kick-ass book titled Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Heavy Metal on the show. Speaking of Call right now, 877-758-5572, extension 702, and you will win a copy of this killer book. All right, now, Jeff, what were some of the challenges that you faced while writing Mean Deviation?
Oh, I had plenty of challenges. One was the definition. Like I said earlier, it's such, my definition is broad, it's expansive. It doesn't allow it to be, I wouldn't even say it's super liberal. I just think I could make arguments for all kinds of different bands that weren't even in the book as being progressive, like My Dying Bride, for one.
I love those guys.
I think they were pretty progressive for a while. I don't talk about them very much. Anathema is the same way. I didn't get a chance to touch on these bands. So the challenge was really like, how broad do I make this book, and who do I cut out, and what arguments do I choose to make versus what arguments am I just going to kind of leave behind? So there was quite a bit of stuff that was written that was cut out because it's already a jam-packed book, and it already is kind of by the end of it you're exhausted with all the different tangents and names that are thrown at you. So that was a big challenge. So that's just purely like an arrangement challenge. There was just so much to kind of pull under the cover of the book.
I bet.
Yeah, and I'd say that was the number one challenge, and the thing that every time I sat down to write that I just had to really consider, and then once I got that, once I was like, okay, this is what's going in, all this different stuff, like how the hell do I arrange it? Ian helped me with some of the arrangement, and we must have looked at several different configurations, and sometimes we'd go back to my original idea after like messing with it 3 or 4 times. So it was just a lot to organize. It was kind of brutal because I'm not going to take away anything from Daniel Eckeroth, who wrote Swedish Death Metal, which is a great book. But he had sort of a nice little capsule of things to work with. It was all in Sweden. It was all in kind of a one particular time frame. It's all kind of one sound. I mean, you have variations even there, of course, but it's like I'm going to write a much simpler book next time I write a book, because it was really like it was a huge challenge, and sometimes I was just like kicking myself for going, why did I even get involved in this? Because it's not as cut and dried of a style. It's not even a style. I don't consider it a musical style so much. It's certainly not a movement. I mean, it happens all across the globe, all kinds of different bands that don't intersect whatsoever. So yeah, that was really the whole damn thing was a challenge, to answer your question.
Jeff Wagner on Metalicious tonight, celebrating all things progressive on the show, and that brings us to this band right here. Now, I get crap all the time for loving this band. They are from Sweden, and the band is Opeth. Now, I am a huge Opeth fan, in addition to another band by the name of Porcupine Tree. And if you guys don't know, just recently, the frontmen from both bands, Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth and Steven Wilson from Porcupine Tree, got together and they created a project by the name of Storm Corrosion. Now, Jeff, I know you are totally aware of this. Are you super excited about their self-titled album? I believe it is coming out next month.
I can't wait for that album.
I know, me too. I actually heard...
This is the thing. Like, I think there are very few artists out there right now that have been going as long as both Michael Okerfeldt and Steven Wilson, who have remained vital and creative. Like, I'm one of these people that thinks later Opeth is the best Opeth. Like, I think their last album is... I love their last album.
It's really weird.
I love Watershed.
Me too.
I mean, Still Life was when they really became, to me, a great band. I like the first 3. I know that's like anathema for a lot of people. Not the band, but it's heresy for a lot of people for somebody to say that. But all I'm saying is I think Michael Ackerfeld and Steven Wilson are still totally vital, totally creative, totally fresh as artists. And there's not that many people that have been going as long as they have. And now they're like in this band, they're doing this project together. So, anybody, if you're into these two bands, that's pretty exciting.
It is very exciting. And I agree with you 150%. And it was kind of like, I get crap a lot of times for liking Opeth. I like all of their albums. I think that they're amazing, period. They're so talented. Like, it is,
Yep.
it's like mind-blowing, both. And I've seen Blackfield and, the two collaborating together is just amazing. And I cannot wait to hear the album. I just know it's going to be freaking sick.
I think it's going to be great. I mean, those guys managed to pull off great stuff time and time again, and I just feel like they're inspired by each other, obviously. You know, they really do. They're kind of fans of each other.
I know, it's funny. It's cute.
What's that?
I said it's cute.
It's cute, yeah.
It is. It's cute.
Lots of man music loving right there. Speaking of, here is Opeth with Porcelain Heart on MetalAssaultRadio.com. Porcupine Tree on Metalicious with the Creator has a master tape. God damn it, you better believe it. Love that song. Thank you so much for logging on to Metal Assault Radio tonight, where we have special guest Jeff Wagner, author of the book titled Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Heavy Metal. It's out now on bazillionpoints.com. Now, before we get back to our killer interview with Jeff, I would like to take some time to share with you some news about a very, very special young lady. The owner of this kick-ass radio station, Dean, he has a wonderful daughter named Haley, and about 2 weeks ago, she was diagnosed with leukemia. While she is undergoing treatment right now and is healing one day at a time, to show support to her, a kick-ass show has been put together for her benefit. It's called Concert for Cancer, and it happens Saturday, August 4th in Robertsville, Missouri. Tickets are $10. Also, if you want to help out, you can go to helphaley.org. There you can follow her progress and also make a donation. Thank you so much, Haley, Dean. My best wishes go out to both of you, and much, much, much love. Now, tonight, we have a very special guest on the show, Jeff Wagner, author of Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Heavy Metal. Now, is there anything you would change about the book now that it's been out for almost 2 years?
Oh, there's definitely things I would change. I think it's one of those things where, like, if you talk to any band, like, they're probably never satisfied with any album because they always see the things that are wrong. So I pick up the book from time to time, not very often, but I'll pick it up and I'll think, God, that sounds stupid, or like, or I just think of things I could have conveyed a lot better. But for the most part, I'm happy with it. And it is what it is. For one thing, I hope people understand is, like, you get to the end of the book and Mike Portnoy's still in Dream Theater, but you know what happened? Like, I swear, the day that the presses started rolling at the printer, he quit Dream Theater. I'm like, oh, fantastic! My book is dated instantly, right?
Oh, no.
Thanks, Mike. You could have talked to me about that.
Oh, man. Oh.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. I mean, stuff's gonna go on. The scene will continue. The movements will continue. The little diversions will continue. And my book's just going to have to be looked at as a capsule that ends in late 2010, and that's just going to have to be the best I can do.
And that is fucking awesome. Jeff Wagner on the show tonight, author of the killer book titled Mean Deviation, 4 Decades of Progressive Heavy Metal, out on bazillionpoints.com right now. More from Jeff coming soon. Now I want to give away a pair of tickets to the Decibel Tour featuring Behemoth, Watain, The Devil's Blood, and In Solitude. Sunday, April 22nd at the Hawthorne Theater. Caller 6 wins right now. That number is 877-758-5572, extension 702. Good luck. Now, let's continue our journey into the progressive metal world and visit a band from Sweden called Pain of Salvation. The song, A Trace of Blood, on MetalAssaultRadio.com. The sweet sounds of Rush on Metalicious with Natural Science, where tonight we put the spotlight on progressive metal, and Jeff Wagner, author of the book titled Mean Deviation, 4 decades of progressive heavy metal, has been on the show, giving us some kick-ass insight into the making of this cool book, which is out now on bazillionpoints.com. Now, Jeff, before we wrap this up, I want you to know, as I read this book, it changed my idea of what progressive metal is.
That's, honestly, thank you. Yeah, that's about the best compliment I can get, and it also tells me that you read it in the spirit that it was written, like you kind of got what I was trying to do. And I love when people say that about it, that it changed their idea about what progressive metal is all about. That's the best compliment you can get. So.
Oh, yay!
So I'm glad you got that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and again, it was kind of like that record that I had to, again, I was reading it, and as I was reading it, I was like, well, that's interesting. I'm very open-minded, and I was like, okay. And as I read, I was like, okay. And then the more I read, I'm like, that makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally. Okay.
Good. I hope that's partly because there were a lot of little sort of loose ends that I had to tie together in that book. That book was in danger of being way too scattered because of my broad definition. But I tried to keep some sort of threads going. So hopefully, maybe that's what you're talking about is the aha moment.
Right.
That you can kind of discover when you read it.
Well, too, part of it is like, when you're just so used to thinking you're thinking in one manner, you've never even considered a different idea just because it's never, you know what I mean? Like, you've never thought any further than what you have. I don't need,
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
And then when
we get comfortable in our definitions maybe of things. And then we view things is maybe what you're saying.
So, and I was like...
And I kind of tried to push that out a little bit more and make people think.
You did absolutely.
Maybe a different way about things.
You nailed it.
Just in the same way that these bands have made people think about metal.
Right.
Right. It's kind of a reflection of what I'm writing about. Hopefully.
Exactly. That's very cool. Now, okay, if somebody who never really listened to progressive metal in the past asked you to recommend 3 albums to sort of point the way to the trailhead. I know, right? What 3 albums would you choose and why?
I'll say Cynic's Focus. I'll throw that out there. I think the Focus album tied together a lot of different hallmarks of what progressive metal is or is all about, or what the sort of thinking is.
Awesome.
I'll skip saying a Dream Theater album because it's not like I don't like Dream Theater. I think that Fate's Warning always deserved a lot more credit than they got. Another one of my favorite bands of all time.
Mine too.
I don't know which Fate's Warning album to choose, but I'll go with Awaken the Guardian because there was a complexity and there was a sort of sublime element to it. There was kind of there was a very intellectual and even emotional component to that album that you weren't getting out of a lot of metal bands in 1986. So I'll put that one up there. And I kind of got to go back. I know a lot of people don't think of Rush as a metal band, but I kind of do. At least, if you look at their stuff from the 70s, like Corrosive Steel and 2112, those were early metal albums as much as they were, I guess, progressive hard rock albums.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Moving Pictures is the one and only perfect album in my world, and I'll put that on the list. So
awesome.
Focus, Fate's Warning, Awaken the Guardian, Rush, Moving Pictures.
Sweet.
There you have it, straight from the progressive metal guru's mouth. Jeff Wagner, thank you so much for being part of the show tonight and for putting together this killer playlist. Everyone, go get your copy of Mean Deviation, 4 decades of progressive heavy metal right now on bazillionpoints.com. It is one of the best discovery books ever. Speaking of, caller 6 right now at 877-758-5572, extension 702 will win their very own copy of Mean Deviation. Good luck. Thanks to everyone for tuning in tonight. Thanks to Silent J. We love you guys. We're going to leave you with the band Leporus, and the song is called Mediocrity Wins. And until next time, keep the metal spirit.